Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest Angry Chicken video. Garrett was away this week, but I was able to talk to Ridiculous Hat about Hearthstone's newly announced game mode, Hearthstone Duels. Hope you enjoy. Hearthstone Duels is a PvP dungeon run, which means it has all of the trappings of the dungeon run mode, but instead of playing against predetermined bosses, you are playing against another person who also has built a dungeon run deck and has gone through all the same treasures and buckets and all of those steps, and you play against each other, and so the other person kind of becomes the boss you face as you work through the dungeon run. And it has a max of 12 wins or 3 losses, so very, very similar to Arena in that vein. And each season of Duels is going to have a theme. So right now, it's called Wizard Duels. So the overall mode is Hearthstone Duels, and the theme will change. So we are in the Wizard season, think of it that way right now, and we are pitting the Scholomance professors against each other. So, for instance, Professor Slate is the Hunter professor. And so if you choose to play as Hunter, then you will be choosing to play as Professor Slate. Those themes will change with each new expansion, and your season in Duels will last the length of an expansion cycle. So they are very much tying Duels into the current expansion, which I think is a really good idea. Or I guess not with the current expansion, but with the, I guess, previous expansion, because the Scholomance Professor Duel is going to be taking place during the Dark Moon expansion.
I'm guessing this is a little bit of funkiness with releasing before the next set is out, because they are adding Whispers of the Old Gods to the pool starting when this set comes out. So you'll get access to the Madness, the Darkmoon Fair, and the Whispers cards. So I imagine this is just a Frankenstein theme for the first iteration of Duels while it's in early access.
And then it'll probably start to line up. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that'd be my theory.
So Hat just mentioned rotating sets. So this will change over time, the sets that are available to you to do your deck building. So it will be for this first season, Scholomance Academy, One Night in Karazhan, Nax, and Basic Classic. And the new expansion and Whispers of the Old Gods will be added on the 17th when this goes into beta. So that, again, is the start of season 1. And so we should talk about how your collection matters, because that was one thing that they really talked about as, you know, the lead up to this mode. Is they didn't give us a whole lot of information about what it was going to be, but what they did say is that your card collection is going to matter. This is not going to be like Arena. This is not going to be like Battlegrounds, where you can go in with a totally blank card collection, because what you're going to be doing is using your collection to build a deck. So you will go in and choose a hero, which will give you your class. Then you choose your hero power, and then you choose a treasure, and then you go to build your deck. So in dungeon runs, you get a standard like starter deck, but in this, you're going to use your collection to actually build a 15 card deck that you are not allowed to get duplicates for, which is really interesting, I think. So you have to choose 15 unique cards from your collection from those sets, which again are going to rotate and change over time. And it only pulls from your collection. So the more cards that you have in those sets, the better off you're going to be. You are also going to use your collection to unlock hero powers and treasures. So some of the examples that they gave were, if you own Professor Slate, like the legendary in your collection, and you choose to play Hunter within the PvP dungeon mode within Duels, then you unlock a special hero power for Professor Slate. They also gave the example of, say, owning a certain number of cards from an expansion or a certain number of a type of card. So I think epics was the example. So if you owned 30 epics from a set, then you might get access to a different treasure. So there's a couple of different ways where I guess completionism or like a larger set will potentially unlock hero powers and treasures for your characters. So that is how they've decided to make collection matter. Which, Hat, what are your thoughts on collection mattering? Do you think they've gone too far? Have they not gone far enough to reward older players? Because right now, if I'm like, so I've been playing since beta, I don't really play Wild, so I have nothing for my collection to currently do. So is this a nice bonus for older players, or is this too punishing on new players? Should we have a mode that is punishing on new players to reward old ones? What are your thoughts?
So I think it's a little too early to tell. I will say, for the players that are worried that you have to craft legendaries from Nax, no, I promise you really don't. There's Loatheb and garbage, so don't worry. You don't need to go craft Baron Rivendare. You don't need to make Stalag or Fugan. It's legendaries were a little different back in the day.
Yes.
Just wait until TTT rotates in, and then you'll look through that set and be like, wow. Yeah.
There's nothing worth over there.
It was the first set they put out 200 legendaries, and both were bad.
Yeah.
Shout out to Dreadscale and Acid Maw.
Yeah.
The 1-2 punch. So I think this is good, but I think they're going to have PR issues. I think that they're going to be players that feel like they're being left behind. There are only 3 sets legal, 3 expansions. And the best cards in most of these sets are going to be the commons. And you can go make Mad Scientist or Cloaked Huntress. You want to put them in the 100 deck for 40 dust each, and I think it's totally worth it. But keep in mind that the power level on average is going to be lower. The buckets that you choose from, even though you can unlock some buckets by having certain cards in your collection, which makes sense because if there's synergy with a card you don't own, then you're not going to get those. All the cards that are offered to you over the course of a potentially 14-game run are going to be not based on your collection. They're going to be based on whatever Blizz wants to give you. So the vast majority of your deck by the end of your run is not going to be cards that you started with.
Right. It's your starting deck in particular that is going to be dictated by your collection.
Yeah. So after 5 games, half of your deck is going to be that starting collection. It's going to keep on growing unless you take the skip buckets, which you want to do sometimes. Ben Lee talked about this mode using your collection in the Ashes reveal video in April, but that was 6 months ago. There's the game's economy still is in need of a little bit of an adjustment for that initial outlay, and a lot of free-to-play players needed to dust their wildcards to keep up. I don't think that you need a large investment to enjoy this mode as free-to-play. The casual laddering, like the mode that's active right now, is free to enter, and the base heroes are free to play. You'll pay for variety. You need to craft more cards for variety. You don't need more cards to be competitive or relevant. But if you're a player that runs into cards you don't have, it's probably not going to feel great. And having to look up commons and craft them can be a little tedious. And if you see a legendary you really want to play and you don't have it, it's a big justification to craft it just for duels, especially if it's not good enough for wild. I think they're trying to thread the needle here, and I'm going to give them partial credit. But there are going to be some players that say, I really want to play with this card and I really don't want to make it, and there's not currently a good solution for that. But for players like us that have older cards and we're waiting for a way to use them in a way that was relevant, Wild right now, the vast majority of the wild cards, you can't play with them. I want to run Gang Boss again, but it's not good enough. You can't play a 3-mana 2/4 when, again, your opponents are playing 0-mana 8/8 and taking an extra turn. But so when Black Rock Mountain comes back around, we can play Gang Boss again. We can play the cards that were good back then but aren't good now. The variety is awesome, and I love that we have the ability to bring back our old friends and play with them. And it's only 1 card per deck, but I can see there being a point where players that don't have it feel like, I'm not sure if it's worth it to spend the mental energy to figure out what I need to make if I even have the resources. It's going to be tough. I think it'll end up landing that you probably don't need to invest that much, but the feels of not investing are occasionally going to be pretty rough.
Yeah, and I agree with that, although I think that there are some players who have been around for the vast majority of Hearthstone, who have kept their collection, who are completionists, that it's really nice that there's something for them now, because I think for the last, like, as long as I can remember, the new player experience has really dominated not only the conversation, but also the communication coming out of the Hearthstone team. And it's made veteran players, I think, feel a little bit bad, like, oh, now when new players start, they get a whole entire deck and you can get a whole mage deck full of legendaries because Highlander was the option for so long. And that's a whole bunch of bonus dust too. Although, yes, the crafting system, I completely agree, needs to be looked at. We've been saying that literally since Hearthstone started. It's way too punishing to try to craft your own stuff. But we're also, and we're going to talk about this a little bit in system updates, is we're about to get a revamp of how we get gold, how much gold we get, how many packs we get. All that kind of stuff is also coming with some system adjustments in the next few weeks. So it is like, it's going to be easier to acquire cards, I think. And there's going to be a lot of reward potential out there. There's lots of little bags of hundreds of gold at a time now. So I think that it's probably going to work out in your favor if you weren't currently playing like every single day and doing every single daily quest. Like if you ever used lost a daily quest because you hadn't cleared out your quest log, then the new system will be better, and then it's going to be easier to get cards, and I think people will be able to catch up. Like you said, I think there's a lot of commons and rares that are really good, especially from the older sets. So I think this will work out okay. And I'm glad that we're finally getting something for veterans, because I think that that's really important. You need to keep your existing player base happy as well as worry about the new guys coming in. But if your existing player base always feels slighted, then much like the competitive scene we were talking about earlier, right? Like if we're constantly getting the message that the veteran player experience and our huge card collections don't matter, then, the team's only concerned about the new player experience and what the new players are getting and making it better for them. It's like, okay, but I've been here and giving you money for 5 years. Can you do something for me, please? And now I feel like they are. So as much as I am sensitive to the new player experience and the free to play experience and the needing to dust all the cards and everything else, like I'm glad that my play style is finally getting a reward, I guess.
And this mode, I played exactly one duel before the show today.
Me too.
This mode it's fantastic. It's really, really fun.
I feel like, I don't know if there's people who are dungeon run players or arena players or something or both, but I got my butt kicked. I was like, I'm just going to go in and just YOLO it and have some fun. And it was like, I just got ruined.
Yeah, it is it's day one of the new mode, and it's only matching by your record. So a friend of mine posted a screenshot of he was at 0-0 and was playing against Language Hacker. Like everyone is inside this mode right now.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be a learning curve. And I actually saw a tweet from Liquidox, who's a pro player from the UK, that said he thinks the mode has a lot of depth and could be a competitive format. And the ranked version of this, the heroic version, is going to have visible rating like Battlegrounds.
Yes.
So there's some depth here, and I expect the skill will really, really matter, but also it's just a lot of fun and has just the right amount of variability.
Right. So we should talk about that. There's two different modes within the mode. So right now, casual is available, which is free. It has no rewards, launched today in early access, and you have access to 1 hero power and 1 treasure as of right now, because this is an early access beta test, guys. So they are rolling things out slowly to make sure that it's playable and doesn't break. So right now for early access, you can play in casual mode. Starting on November 17th with the launch of the expansion, we are getting heroic mode, and this is going to be just like Arena. That includes both rewards and cost. So it's going to be 150 gold or $2 or a tavern ticket. So if you're like me and you never play Arena and you've got a whole bunch of Arena tickets sitting there, those will actually be updated to also give you entry into Hearthstone Duels. So I think I've got about 10 dual entries right now, just based on my unused Arena tickets. So yeah, and like I said earlier on, it is capped at 12 wins or 3 losses. So again, very, very similar to Arena. So when heroic mode does unlock, then you're going to gain access to 2 hero powers and 3 treasures. Again, we're testing things. All of these things will be fleshed out and given you more options at a later date. Eventually, you will have the choice of 3 hero powers and 6 treasures. But again, all that stuff is going to be unlockable at a later time. So you will be able to play. You will, like Hat said, have an MMR, though there will be no leaderboards posted. So it will be visible to you, but not to everybody else. And yeah, so then you can go and do your 12 win run attempts in heroic mode. So this is really, I think, fun and interesting. As of right now, Celestalon did tweet earlier today that you cannot challenge your friends in this mode, but it could be interesting later on. And he did say, which, is probably going to make arena players really unhappy, but basically the tweet from Celestalon was saying that they're open to options. It's early. They want to see how people like it. And right now there is no like tournament functionality. Like
where people might forget how rough around the edges Battlegrounds was when we first started. This is a new thing that they added to the client today and has never seen wide usage outside of the devs. Stuff's going to break. There are already plenty of screenshots that the buckets are funky. And there are times where you will technically get 3 different buckets, but 2 of the cards are the same in all 3. There are going to be some beta things. It is in right now. It is early access.
We are testing.
They are gating it because they want to make sure it's clear that you can buy this to play this early, but it says early access. It's not done.
Yeah.
So go in with an open mind, and it's a lot of fun. It's like head-to-head Slay the Spire, which I love. Really happy about that. It just hits the right balance between it's not quite as grindy as seeing the same decks and constructed in a solved meta, and it's not quite as variable or toned down as Arena, which I could never really maintain interest in because it just felt like it was Yeti bumping the whole time, just like develop a board and trade a bunch. This feels synergistic but variable. It's a really nice sweet spot, and I really can't wait to play more.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes from the choices that you get to make. So much like Battlegrounds, you are offered 4 heroes randomly out of a pool. There is the pool currently just matches Hearthstone classes. So there's 10 options. It's all the traditional Hearthstone classes plus Demon Hunter. And then on top of that, you get to pick out of your pool of treasures, which, like I said, starts right now at 1. Then it will go up to 2 and 3 and eventually 6. And that comes from a pool of a lot. I believe it's something around like 50 treasures or maybe more. I don't know, but it's quite a large pool. So it's
enormous.
Yeah, that is really going to make not only each run, but also what deck you're trying to build. That's going to really bring the variability. Like you're not necessarily going to be able to go in just because treasures are so powerful. You're not going to be able to just go in and be like, okay, I'm a token druid and that is my thing that I'm going to do and I'm going to play. It's like you might go in thinking that and have a build you'd like to try, but then maybe you don't get druid, or you get druid, but then, the treasures that you get are not meant for a token style deck. And then you're like, okay, well now I have to rethink my options. So I think because treasures are so powerful and the pool is so big, I think that this is going to be a lot more variable and a lot harder to solve than any other mode we've kind of got right now. I think there will probably be like tier lists, kind of like there are for Arena, where they say, like if you get these, like this treasure is better than this treasure, sort of a deal. But I still don't necessarily think it's going to be like solvable necessarily.
Yeah, there's enough variation that there will be heroes that I agree there will be a tier list of heroes that generally work a little better more often, and heroes that are either less consistent or less powerful when they do work. It'll be like Battlegrounds, right? Battlegrounds heroes, at least when the mode was first launched, there were some very clear outliers at the top, but not enough that it was always a problem that if you saw them in the game, and some at the bottom where you really wanted to pick them, but you could if you had to. And the better here is just they worked better with more tribes or with whatever you saw, more reliable. And I imagine that either the more reliable heroes will be the best pick or the most powerful ones if you're able to spike pretty hard, but that'll be less consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we're also probably going to see, again, because this pulls from your collection, I think it's going to follow some of the trends of Wild and Standard in that there are going to be some heroes that are known to be like the budget option, right? Like that, if you get them, then, or you don't have a large collection, then you might want to aim for the Warlocks and the Hunters of the world because a lot of their commons and rares are a lot better. They don't require these super big, crazy legendaries in order to have those big, powerful turns. Like you can make a super solid deck in those classes based on your commons and your rares. So I think that there's probably going to be a little bit of that too with the budget versus the, like if you've got everything, then you want to, swing for the fences with insert class here. So I think we're going to see some of that too.
It's worth noting as well, Self-Sharpening Sword is banned from Rogue. You can't include it in your opening deck. Don't worry if you don't own Zephyrus. You don't need it because they're just going to ban it. It's any card that is a real major outlier. And this is the first time since Tavern Brawl, since the Battle of the Blocks, where you look in the collection, the card says banned over it. You just can't pick it. They can curate the pool pretty clearly. Mm-hmm. If there are any outliers they don't want in the mode, they're just like, that's gone. They just, boop, they're just gone. Yeah. And that level of control is pretty exciting because that's also functionality they would include in, I'm not going to say it, but if there were a mode that rhymed with Burnament, then you would use that functionality. But I can't speculate what kind of mode that would be.
Yes. So that is essentially Duels in a nutshell. If you do the pre-order, then you can get access. But this is actually really interesting because they're going to be doing free weekends and also Twitch drops to give access. And so it's not necessarily based on pre-orders. So just keep your eyes out and get in some of those streams and make sure that your Blizzard account is tied to your Twitch account so that you're eligible for some of those drops. So that is, again, for access into Duels for early access. So go and check it out. Watch your favorite streamers. And yeah, good luck to everyone getting access to that. You can subscribe to The Angry Chicken on all your favorite podcast apps like Spotify, Google Play, and iTunes. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss another Angry Chicken video.